All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Graph Community Talk number 36. This is the community talk in the Graph ecosystem where we can get updates about community updates and cool big projects around the ecosystem will come on in segments to showcase what they're doing. Today, we will have a little bit of a different order than usual. We will start off with a segment about the sunrise of decentralized data and the sunrise of the graph. And we have Paolo here from the Graph Foundation who will start off showcasing the sunrise.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Colson, and thank you for inviting me. We know, last week we held a very big celebration around the world. So we have also here Lorena that hosted a beautiful party in Buenos Aires. So it was Thursday 13 when we celebrate the sunrise of the graph. So what is this about? So basically, this is it's really a long journey. So it was actually 6 years ago. It was exactly the same period of the time. It was early in June in 2018 when the graph showcased and launched the hosted service. At that time, that was like a temporary scaffold. It was just, showcasing an idea of a decentralized protocol. Of course, it was like just a centralized server, and it was very much needed at the beginning because bootstrapping a decentralized ecosystem is quite complicated because you need to build also incentives, and so it was needed to have this sort of proof of concept that then became so big, and developers started to understand the benefits of having this centralized solution because before the graph, developers needed to build their own indexing servers. So it was like reinventing the wheel every time because it was also a lot of resources to index, for example, at that time, okay, mainly was Ethereum. So, but it's like you needed to build a search engine from scratch. So, providing the system, developers find, a very easy way and also to use this new standard that the graph created subgraphs. So open API to query using GraphQL to query the blockchain data. So, and that was 2018. And this hoster service became really, a giant system. So hosting more than 40,000 subgraphs. And and then I think we defined it already, was Graph Day in 2022. I think also Colson, probably you remember we were together also with a lot of people here, with Esti, Lorena. So when Yaniv Tal was, already defining the road for the day, for today. So the sunset of the Oster service. It took, quite some time because, building a decentralized infrastructure, as we said, is quite, it's not cannot be always linear. So it's pretty complicated. So, and it requires, coordinating a lot of people, a lot of actors around the world. But finally, now we are here and we can say that today, we really launched the Graph Network. So Graph Network was launched in December 2020. So we also host birthday party every December. But I think that we can really say that, the official launch of the Graph Network was a week ago. Mostly on the 12th of June, because now, the hosted service is almost, shutting down. There are it's still active actually, but with limited, bandwidth. So all the subgraphs, they are still there. They do not upgrade it. They have just a limited bandwidth of queries. So it will be completely shutting down end of the month. But all the biggest application, all the biggest apps are already migrated. So we have at the moment 60,000 and more subgraphs, including projects like Aave or ENS, Uniswap, the Lido, all the big DeFi are on the graph. Also, of course, Messari and other like Balancer, SushiSwap, and many more. So there are more than 6,000 subgraphs. Some people were asking me, for example, days ago, okay, but we had like 30,000, 40,000 subgraphs on the hosted. Why only 6,000? Well, the majority of the subgraph on hosted were also like people testing, training. And for example, in my case, I have 3 subgraphs that, they were just for testing. So these 6,000 subgraphs that are today in the decentralized network are real application. They are really consuming data. So for example, Aave or Uniswap, they have several subgraphs and they are consuming a lot of data. For example, just in terms of statistics, so if we measure like the 30 days, the last 30 days compared to the same period of time last year, we had about 90 million queries on the network. So now, I mean, counting the last 30 days, we have almost 1 billion queries. So in the decentralized network. So this is like 11, 11x growth. And so that is because, finally all the biggest application, all the biggest, subgraphs are finally migrated to the decentralized network. And also in terms of query fees, so we see compared to year over year, we have like 376% growth. And that is just the beginning because I mean the migration happened really like less than a week ago, and all this major application migrated in the basically in the last couple of weeks. So we are going to see now, more and more grow in terms of, volume of query fees, and all, I mean, this on more than 60 chain. So, and, all the now developer and application can rely, on a super fast, network with 99%, 99.9% uptime and redundant and supported by more than 100 indexer worldwide. So that is really, I mean, the beginning of the, something really big that was really a long journey, more than 6 years to arrive to this point. So, and so that is the main update about the sunrise. And for any,
Amazing.
yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of people to thank for helping with the migration. Is there any group of people in particular that you would like to give a shout out?
Well, I think all the support team now we have, as you know, the support team is growing a lot. So, for example, now we have our amazing Yash that just joined. Hi, Yash. So, Yash is one of the support in the support team, and he was super busy. I know because when I messaged him, he was really crazily busy. And also, I want to, I mean, make a kudos to all the program because also Yash started in the advocacy program. So, like so yeah, congratulations, Yash, from the advocacy program to be full-time agent node and to be one of the key player on this upgrade together with the team, together with also we have Mitchell, we have also Jerry, and we have on another addition to the team is Shia. So we have 4 support team. They did an amazing work. Also Mitchell is here. Hi Mitchell. So yeah, he also was super busy. Yeah, yeah. So
Great. Thank you
that's
so
it.
much. Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's any other questions for Paolo about this update. Could be in the chat. You could also free to unmute. Okay, I don't think there is any questions. So I want to thank once again Paolo for joining us and
Thank you.
sharing this
Thank you,
amazing
Juan.
update with us. Yeah, thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.
Bye bye. All right. So before we get into the second segment, I would like to give a small community update and give a shout out to the GRTIQ podcast. And I will start with the update. So next month in Brussels, in Belgium, there will be two major events happening and a lot of side events, namely ECC and EAT Global Brussels. I know that a lot of people that are in Europe from the graph are going. So if you are going there, please let us know so we can maybe make a group chat and hang out with everyone. I know that a bunch of people from Edgenode and the foundation are going. Some of the Advocates DAO members are going. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I would like to see everyone there. So if you're going, please let us know. So for the GRTIQ podcast, we have episode 171 with James Hendler, 172 with Dan French, and 173 with Ruolan Chai. And I believe Lorena will share the links to the podcast with you guys in the chat here. And we will also share it in the show notes later on, so you can check them out later as well. For our second segment, we are going to hear from Everclear, which was previously Connext. And Everclear coordinates the global settlement of liquidity between chains, solving fragmentation for modular blockchains. And we have two people joining us today. I see Aryan, and I believe Tommy is also here, but I believe Aryan will be speaking. So yeah, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, Graph folks. It's really awesome to be here. First off, congratulations on Sunrise. It's a huge, huge milestone. I've been as a fun little fact, when Everclear was Connext, we actually worked really closely with the Graph ecosystem back in the day, back in like pre 2020 era. Connext started out as like one of the first projects that was focused on L2 scalability, and like pretty quickly we started working on the problem of micropayments, which is obviously quite important to the Graph ecosystem. So we the like early designs around micropayments within the Graph ecosystem were like building on top of the work that we did for state channels. So I'm super excited to kind of see this milestone. This has been something that like I've been super excited about to see like the Graph ecosystem achieve for years now, and it's amazing that it's finally happened. Like I think the Graph is like the largest decentralized network of its scale, at least decentralized kind of like infrastructure network of its scale. So yeah, congratulations to everybody here. So I guess I can give a little bit of a background on kind of what we're doing, and then what we're trying to head towards, the core problems that we're trying to solve, and how we see the future of this ecosystem. In 2021, after focusing on micropayments, Connext pivoted to being really interested in interoperability. We kind of saw that there was this like shared problem associated with all of the scalability projects where everybody was headed towards building rollups, but nobody really knew how to onboard and offboard users from their rollups. And we saw that there was this we kind of foresaw even back in 2021 that there was going to be fragmentation across this whole ecosystem. Flash forward to today, we are absolutely living in that fragmented world. It's extraordinarily complex today for a user to navigate using applications on many chains at the same time. It's a giant pain, and like the vast majority of users are just not able to do this. If we want this ecosystem to work, if we want the kind of whole premise of modular blockchains to work, then that means there are going to be hundreds of rollups. There are going to be potentially thousands of rollups, and we need to be able to allow users to be able to interact with them really seamlessly. Infrastructure projects like the Graph are an important piece of that. But in order to even kind of get there, we need interoperability, right? We need bridges. This is what we started out our thesis in 2021 with. And the second part of that thesis was we realized, well, rollups give us the almost the L1 of interoperability. They give us communication between chains through rollup bridges, right? This is like the kind of big benefit of rollups, is that there's an enshrined state-sponsored bridge. So no one has to that is fundamentally secured by Ethereum, and so no one has to have arguments around like which version of a token is the right version. But in order to actually make rollup bridges usable, in order to make getting between rollups usable and not have to take 7 days to kind of exit to Ethereum and pay Ethereum gas fees and things like that, we needed some like almost like a layer 2 on top of the like rollup bridges to be able to make these transactions instant and seamless. And in 2021, we came up with this model of having some third-party service provider. Today, you would call those third-party service providers solvers, intent solvers. We came up with this model of having some service provider go and front capital to the user on the target chain, so give their own money to the user, and then basically do this as a service and then get repaid by the protocol. So, for example, say Alice wants to go and deposit 100 DAI into Aave, but her 100 DAI is on Optimism, and the pool that she wants to deposit into is on Arbitrum. Well, what Alice can do is, instead of having to go through the whole process of bridging by herself, which is of course quite complex, it requires gas and switching chains and things like that, instead she can go and just pay Bob, pay Bob $1 out of the $100 that she wants to deposit, to simply deposit on her behalf. And how this can happen is that Bob can go and put his own $100 into Aave on Arbitrum, and then he can prove to Alice that he did this correctly. And if he did, then he can go and unlock Alice's funds. He can basically go and get money. He can go and claim the $100 from her. This is a pretty awesome pattern. It's really fantastic to see that we were kind of one of the first teams working with this model, but it's pretty fantastic to see that just about the entire like bridge and interop ecosystem has started to head towards this approach. And it is something that works really well. Like you can deliver these incredible experiences where users just never have to know or care what chain they're on, and that is ultimately the outcome that we want to achieve, right? We kind of call this outcome chain abstraction, similar to account abstraction, where users just never really have to think about some of the lower level details of interacting with the blockchain. So where does Everclear fit into this? And this is kind of where we are today. In the process of creating this model of fronting liquidity to the user on the target chain and getting repaid on the source chain as an intent solver. So this intent-based model. In the process of creating this intent-based model, we realized that there's this big fundamental blocker that stops us from being able to scale the model to every single chain, every single asset. And really that blocker is how many people can run solvers, how many people can actually be that third-party service provider. And when you look at the actual data today, you find something pretty interesting, which is that there's really only a small handful of solvers out there today, and most of them are like very large scale market makers. If you investigate why, you realize it's because these market makers are the only people that can actually operate solvers economically. And the reason for this is that solvers are giving money on Arbitrum and receiving money on Optimism, and so their liquidity is moving between chains. And of course, if you want to kind of get back to where you started, this necessitates having to rebalance. And rebalance basically means moving your liquidity back from Optimism to Arbitrum so that it can be used again. Rebalancing is a really hard problem. It's something that requires a lot of operational work because it requires using the bridges, right? We've shifted all of the complexity of using bridges and figuring out what the best pathway is away from the user over to the solver, but the complexity isn't gone. The solver still has to figure that out. And as it turns out, the people that are able to do this best are market makers who are already doing large-scale rebalancing between chains simply because they have to do it for their own operations on a day-to-day basis. And so what we found was that market makers are just beating everybody out in competition. And in general, these market makers are not very heavily incentivized to work with anything except for the biggest assets and the biggest chains. So what happens as we start, as we move from having like 10 to 20 chains that people are commonly using to hundreds of chains that people are commonly using? Well, it's still an open question. This is kind of where Everclear comes in. And we realized that every single intent-based protocol, ourselves included, have this core problem, which is how do we scale our solvers? How do we make it super passive for our solvers to operate so that anyone can be a solver, not just the big market makers? And what we realized was that this shared problem actually has a very interesting solution in traditional finance. So there's a lot of like parallels, of course, in crypto to how TradFi works. And in TradFi, this type of problem is very similar to the kinds of problems that are experienced by entities like Visa that are taking very, very large amounts of payments going in different directions and consolidating them into settlements that are happening between banks. And so how does Visa handle this problem? Well, Visa employs something called netting, which is basically taking, potentially billions of dollars in bidirectional payments and canceling them out against one another. So there's some really great diagrams that actually help explain netting very well. But so it can be a little bit hard to conceptualize without seeing an image. And then the moment that you see an image, it's like very, very easy to understand. So I would recommend anybody here that's like confused about the concept of netting to just Google it and open up Google Images, and you'll see some like easy flow diagrams that will explain what netting is. But basically, in a nutshell, for those folks who are in the US and familiar with Splitwise, it's basically what Splitwise does. With Splitwise, what happens is you and your friends go on a trip together. You all spend money and you all kind of owe each other money. And instead of all paying IOUs to each other, which is of course quite complex, you just register your IOUs with Splitwise. Splitwise calculates what is the final total of IOUs for everybody. Nice. Tommy dropped an attachment. Perfect. Amazing. Yeah. So I think that can help like elucidate a little bit. What we realized is that there's actually we kind of like started looking into the data underneath transfers that are going across blockchains today, and out of all of the public flows that we found, we saw something really interesting, which is that 80% of the volume that moves between chains on a day-to-day basis is actually nettable. That basically means that out of like every $1 that you send across chains, 80 cents actually flows in the opposite direction. And so in theory, you never had to send that full $1. You could have only sent 20 cents. Or another way to put this is that we're bridging about 5 times more than we need to. And this is all just public data. So I think what we kind of realized was that if you include, private data like centralized exchanges, OTCs, things like that, we think that number can get well over 90%. This is really interesting because what it means is that we can massively reduce the costs of rebalancing. We can massively democratize the process of rebalancing and reduce the kind of like operational burden of doing it simply by finding coincidences of wants between different people in the ecosystem, different intent solvers and market makers and centralized exchanges that want to move capital between chains. This is the core principle of Everclear. Everclear is the first clearing layer. Everclear coordinates the global settlement of liquidity between blockchains, solving modular fragmentation. And basically what this means is that Everclear helps, if there are, say, for example, there's a solver that is making a transaction happen, like a $1,000 transaction happen from Optimism to Arbitrum on a cross protocol today. And there's another solver that is making a $1,000 transaction going from Arbitrum to going the opposite direction. So Optimism to Arbitrum on Squid router today, those two solvers can net off against one another and end up back in the same spot without ever having to rebalance. This is kind of a game changer for solvers and for other actors, like other capital actors in the space. It just massively reduces the overhead needed to be one of these entities. And what we hope is that this allows for anyone to be able to go and start being a contributor to these protocols. Everclear is now live on testnet. We announced it a couple of weeks ago. We are heading towards our mainnet launch. That mainnet launch, so Everclear is basically built as its own Arbitrum Orbit rollup, and then it connects to other chains using a combination of Hyperlane and then Hyperlane's eigenlayer ADS under the hood. And it also leverages the graph to be able to go and read data from every other chain. So we're pretty tightly collaborating with the graph ecosystem to try to make it possible to have just seamless access, not only to data, but then also to liquidity everywhere. And the hope is, once we go live, that we can basically create a system that allows any rollup, regardless of any, where you're spinning up. So for example, rollups that are spinning up using a RAS provider like Conduit or Gelato, any rollup to just launch day one with access to seamless liquidity. As a kind of final note here, we sort of really subscribe to the view that rollups are the new servers. And so, it would be just really bizarre to go and launch a server on AWS and then you have to actually go and build a connection to the internet yourself. This space only really makes sense if all of this infrastructure is permissionless. And if you can access the liquidity of the entire ecosystem just out of the box, regardless of where you are. I saw a question, so let me answer that quickly. So Everclear is basically an aggregator / market maker for bridging transactions for many bridges. Kind of, not exactly like an aggregator, because aggregators sit at the top of the stack, whereas Everclear sits at the bottom. So let me see if I can copy another image here, or unless Tommy, I don't know if you have it on hand, but if you have the chain abstraction stack diagram, that could be potentially helpful. I'll also look for it.
I think Tommy just posted it.
Amazing. Love you, Tommy. So the idea here is that an aggregator is basically the kind of fundamental difference between an aggregator and what Everclear is doing is that an aggregator sits at the top of the stack and sort of finds all of the different pathways to get from point A to point B. Whereas Everclear sits at the bottom of the stack. It's completely outside of the user transaction flow. So an end user will never, ever end up interacting with Everclear. And that's by design. It's the same way that as an end user, you are never going to interact with the New York Stock Exchange clearinghouse. You're going to interact with, the trading terminal, or you're going to interact with, Robinhood, or you're going to interact with whatever fund that you're working with that's actually executing the trades. But those entities are the ones that are behind the scenes going and registering trades with the New York Stock Exchange. And then the New York Stock Exchange is doing the process of clearing those trades. Basically, Everclear sits behind all of these bridges and the idea is that every single bridge, regardless of what target market they have, regardless of which ecosystem they're planning to focus on, regardless of like whether you're kind of interacting with them through an aggregator, every single bridge's liquidity, their pricing and their chain support gets a lot better as a result of being able to share liquidity with other bridges. Great question, by the way, Polly.
All right, let's see if there are any other questions. You feel free to leave them in the chat room or unmute your mic. And while we wait, I would like to thank you for coming onto the call. I think this was very insightful. I think most of us here that have been in the ecosystem for quite some time have known of you guys for a long time and have experienced the problems that you guys are fixing. So I think this is really cool. I think the way you explained it was really nice. I think everybody could get it. And yeah, if you guys have any cool updates in the future, feel free to reach out to us and come on again.
Of course, yeah. Thank you guys for having us on. It's really awesome to, like I said, just chat with this ecosystem. And I just want to say I'm like really blown away by how far this ecosystem has come to, because like we've known the Graph team since like 2018, and it's so massive now. It's so fantastic to see that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I see a lot of love for you guys in the chat as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, we're going to go to the next segment. So for the last segment here, before we finish up with the last community updates, I'm going to give over the microphone to Lorena and maybe Andy, if he is still here, because we had a cool hackathon last month during the Berlin Blockchain Week. We had somebody from Connext on last month, Martin, to kind of speak about it, like what was going on. But now that the hackathon is finished and the Berlin Blockchain Week is finished, I would like to invite Lorena to talk about it, because she went all the way from Argentina to Germany to go to this event. So I would like to hear how it was.
Hello, thank you. Could you hear me now?
Yeah, amazing. You sound perfect.
Thank you. Well, last week of June during the in Berlin with plurality, chaining, and Peanuts, we organized Hack and Hate Hackathon, an online hackathon where many devs and teams participate to with very, very interesting projects. Okay, so all focus on decentralized data. That is important to understand. So we already have different tracks. Plurality has a 1,000 USDT track, and the graph organize a track with the same amount. Chainlink has 3 different tracks, and that was a very, very impressive project. And for the graph winner track was 1 ticket. It was a platform that allowed users to create tickets for the events and resell tickets. So it was very interesting. And in addition of that, we have track GM Builder, Treasury DAO for Tsunami, and related with Chainlink, Price Tour, Medichain, and Royal, and all the projects were incredible. So congrats to all the winners. And related with that, it's very important to understand that the graph support different hackathons, online and in-person hackathon. The graph support it global, as Colson mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. So all of you are invited to participate in this kind of hackathon. You can join to the we have a Telegram group focus on hackers, and you can join to the Discord too, to if you are interested in that. So you are free to contact us to learn more about that. Thank you, Colson.
Yeah, thank you so much as well. Before we conclude this call, I know that last time Emily asked if she could come on, but I missed the message. So I'm wondering if she would like to give a shout out to the podcast she is doing. And I would like to ask Chidibem if there's any updates from the Graph Africa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I'm chatting from Ghana, Accra, Ghana, right now. There's been a lot of activities going on in the Graph Africa. I'm super thankful to like the team that I'm working with. Temitope is here, Simon is here. Yeah, so right now I'm in Accra. There's this hacker house. It's a 2 week hacker house. It's community slash a hackathon, which is happening for 2 weeks straight. However, we're all together, we're bonding, we're coding, we're learning, and then in Nigeria as well, we have two advocates or three. We have Temitope, we have Adeola, we have Ife. They attended um, and spoke at two different workshops this weekend. One was the WeaveDB campus meetup tour, and then another was this on-chain summer build-a-thon for Lagos. So there's been a lot of activities, and there'll still be more. But yeah, a lot going on right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that update. And I hope we can hear more about this hackathon. Maybe next edition, when it's finished, we can hear some results. That would be really cool. All right.
Um,
Amazing. I saw Emily typing, but I didn't see the finish. So I would just say that before we conclude today's community talk, I would like to remind you that there will be a Indexer office hours session in about, let's see, 80 minutes. So I believe that would be at 1800 UTC. Don't forget to check out the core developer updates on the forum, where all of the core developers in the ecosystem gave a update on what they did last month. So that would be perfect if you guys check that out if you want to keep updated and see what all of the teams are doing. And after that, I would like to thank you for this episode of Community Talk. Thank you to all the speakers and everybody in attendance. If you have any cool segments for next month's episode, please let us know. I know that we will be covering a lot about ECC and about Eat Brussels, but if you have any other things going on all around the world, please do let us know so we can cover it on the next episode. And I see that Emily shared a link here that about her podcast, the Grapher Club, and I think this is the latest episode. So if you guys have not seen that yet, please check that one out. It's a really, really cool podcast. And I see with Christina. So that's going to be a very good one. All right. I would now like to open up the floor for anybody to ask questions or anybody to mention something. And if there's no further questions, I would like to wish everybody a great day. And I hope to see you all again next month. So thank you so much.